for their lives. In fact, one of the cameramen that I worked with earlier today in Hoboken was just running, and they boarded the ferry. He doesn't live in New Jersey, but like many other people, just jumping onto the ferry just to get out of harm's way. The ferries were also used to transport victims as well of the smoke inhalation and other injuries. In fact, the PATH train entrance, of course, no access to New York City, was a triage center. Dozens of ambulances from all over New Jersey treating people, all the hospitals in the area on standby. I went to the Lone Hospital, St. Mary's in Hoboken, as you mentioned. In New York City, people lined up around the block, a long line as well, people lining up, giving their names and phone numbers to donate blood. The hospital was just simply overwhelmed. They said normally they take 1 or 2 people to give blood. They just simply couldn't accommodate the many volunteers that were coming forth to try to lend their hand in any way. Just a surreal scene, Paula. Jet fighters overhead. I saw a fully outfitted SWAT team in the mayor's office in Hoboken, and that was offset by one of the most beautiful days of the year, spectacular Indian summer day. One person who was watching it with me said there's really not a cloud in the sky except for the huge billowing cloud of smoke that was coming over from the World Trade Center. Paula.
You described that beautifully, because as I stand here on this balcony tonight, it is one of those crystal clear nights and so eerie, because as I look over my shoulder where the World Trade Center once stood, there is nothing but a big black hole with smoke continuing to billow out of it. Susan, was there any sense of anger among the people you spoke with?
Oh, most definitely. But I think the overwhelming emotion is just one of shock. People were comparing it to Pearl Harbor earlier today. I think everyone recognized the magnitude of what happened. I was actually in the mayor's office in Hoboken when the building was collapsing. We had a perfect view of the building, and even while the mayor was planning this emergency of just unprecedented proportions, everybody's eyes were red-rimmed because they knew. Everybody knows somebody who got hurt. Everybody knows families of somebody who got hurt today in what we saw downtown Manhattan.
And I guess, Susan, it's this stage that we all shudder to think how many fatalities we may be facing in the days to come. Susan, thanks so much for that report.
Sure.
Before I go back to Bill Hemmer in Atlanta, just a very quick update. The mayor of the city confirming that the fatality numbers will be very, very high. One city official telling me on the phone into the thousands. People believed to be alive, trapped in buildings nearby what is left of the World Trade Centers. The mayor also confirming that tonight or earlier today, New York City not only lost its fire chief, but its deputy fire chief as well. The firefighters union confirming that 265 firefighters, those were among the first 400 first on the scene, are presumed dead. 85 police officers missing tonight. So, Bill, this is a city, as I said earlier this evening, is just beginning to grasp the magnitude of the tragedy that was endured here in this city today.
We're about 7 hours from sunup tomorrow, and indeed tomorrow the images are going to be much darker than we see tonight. Paula, thank you. Quite a bit of information to pass along to you at this point. Senior White House officials indicating to CNN the Air Traffic Control Center for the United States should be up and running tomorrow by noon Eastern time. We had been led to believe earlier today that this indeed would be the case. At this point, all air traffic in the United States for the first time in history has been shut down. But again, we're getting an indication that noon Eastern time tomorrow, air traffic control should be up and working again tomorrow. Now tonight, we continue to put a human face on this tragedy that unfolds not only in New York City and Washington and Pennsylvania, but also in San Francisco. Several of those airplanes bound for California. Our affiliate in San Francisco, KTVU, has done an interview with a woman by the name of Alice Hoagland. She's a flight attendant. Her son, Mark Bingham, was on board United Airlines Flight 93 today, bound for San Francisco. Apparently, he used the plane's airphone to call his mother in San Francisco shortly before that plane crashed in western Pennsylvania. Among other things, he told his mother that 3 men were on board and they had threatened with a bomb. Hear that interview from KTVU, Alice Hoagland, followed by Kathleen Hoagland, who is the aunt of Mark Bingham on board that flight.
That I love you very, very much. in case I don't see you again.
I said that.
That the plane has been taken over by hijackers. And then I said, well, we love you very much too, Mark. Let me go get your mother.
I got on the phone, Mark, and he said, hi, Mom, this is Mark Bingham. Giving me his last name. And he said, I want to let you know that I love you. And I'm flying. I think he said I'm in the air. I'm calling you on the air phone of the airplane.
In his seat.
I presume so. He said, I want you to know I love you very much, and I'm calling you from the plane. We've been taken over. There are 3 men that say they have a bomb. And I said, well, who are they, Mark? And he repeated that he loved me, and he said, I don't think he said, I don't know who they are. He became distracted there, as if someone was speaking to him, and he said, it's something to the effect of, it's true, and then the phone went dead.
Alice Hoagland, Kathleen Hoagland, Mark Bingham on board United Airlines Flight 93, again, that went down today, with several others in western Pennsylvania. The first of many stories we'll be hearing throughout the evening and into tomorrow and the rest of the week here. Also, the brother of the pilot on American Airlines Flight 11 says he had a, quote, sinking feeling when he heard about this morning's terrorist attacks. Jim Oganowski's brother John was the pilot of the first plane to hit one of the World Trade Centers today. Flight 11 was traveling from Boston, bound for L.A., 92 people on board. Oganowski says his brother was a former Air Force pilot who had just celebrated a birthday.
I ask all of you for your prayers for, as I refer to him, as Brother John. And I ask you to also pray for our whole country today in this tragedy that's impacting our whole country.
Oganowski had a farm in the area of Boston, Massachusetts. Also at this time, we're keeping an eye on Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Why do you ask? Because in Kuala Lumpur, the Padronas Towers are located, extending 1,483 feet into the air, the tallest buildings in the world. The reports we're getting from Malaysia and through the Associated Press is that both towers have been evacuated. Apparently, another threat has been issued against those buildings, but again, there is nothing here to confirm that report. What we do know is that thousands have been led out of those towers and into the streets of Kuala Lumpur. Normally, we would not report a bomb threat, but indeed, given the circumstances of today, certainly that story out of Malaysia is relative. Back in this country, we mentioned tomorrow air traffic control should be operating, according to the White House, up and ready at noon Eastern time tomorrow. But tonight, those airports are a very different scene. I'm going to take you to 2 of them now. Bill Delaney is at Logan International in Boston, and in Los Angeles at LAX, we have CNN's Frank Buckley. First, though, to Bill in Boston, Massachusetts. Bill, good evening to you.
Good evening to you, Bill. Very eerie, of course, here since early this morning. This usually very busy airport, eerily quiet all day. Particular shock, particular impact here in Boston because, of course, the 2 planes that crashed into the World Trade Center originated here in Boston. 157 people in all killed on those planes. Dozens of their family members at a hotel right nearby me here just outside Logan Airport at the Hilton Hotel here being counseled. Amid the question, how could 2 planes have been infiltrated, to all appearances, by hijackers, by terrorists? Now, airport officials here tonight, Bill, insisted that Boston's Logan Airport is as safe as any in the world. But this major airport, like other major airports in the United States, has a history of allegations of lax security, particularly in the late 90s, when the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, did a particular study of Logan, a year and a half, 2 years, in which FAA officials repeatedly dressed as passengers and repeatedly breached security here. They brought guns, they brought even pipe bombs onto planes. They got onto planes locked away on the tarmac. They repeatedly breached security, some 136 violations in the late 90s here during that study, leading to some $178,000 in fines issued against Logan Airport just those couple of years ago. Now, Logan Airport enhanced its security since then. For example, there are some 300 locks that lead from terminals to tarmac here at Logan Airport. 26 of them, it was concluded, were so insecure they were subsequently permanently locked. But this an airport with notorious incidents in its past. 2 summers ago, a teenager dressed as an Hasidic Jew managed to get over a fence here, a fence with razor wire on top of it. He managed to get himself onto a London-bound airplane and made it all the way to London. Now, this airport has also repeatedly found people with possibly dangerous implements on them. The airport was shut down several months ago when a man with a gun that turned out to be harmless, was captured at a checkpoint, but the airport was shut down and people were evacuated. So the airport security here, officials tell us, is very much like security at other airports. And in fact, that FAA study, though they denounced on many levels the security here, said the security here in the late 90s was not all that different than security at many other major airports. Officials here already saying that they will probably curb check-in here as soon as the airport reopens. They will probably begin more random security checks. 28 million people go through this airport every year. Now the long, hard questioning of how this could have happened at Boston's Logan Airport. Back to you, Bill.
Bill, hang with me a second here. Curious to know your insights on a personal level, knowing that you've covered the Boston area for many years. Outside of the airport itself, what have you noticed about civilian traffic downtown, on the streets, in the stores, etc., through the course of today?
It's of course not on the level of the extraordinary scenes in New York, but this was a different Boston today. Traffic is something that's fundamental to life in Boston. It's always tangled throughout downtown Boston. But today, that changed dramatically. As the day wore on, it got thinner and thinner. Of course, here at the airport itself, that eeriness I described as we began our conversation, Bill, from 10 in the morning or so, people leaving the airport, and by midday, it was completely empty, as the city itself also emptied. Buses and trains, the fares were taken off buses and trains, so people could leave work and go home. School children sent home early. All public, state, federal, and city offices closed. So a very different Boston today. I'll leave you with maybe one haunting image that stuck in my mind. At this eerily quiet airport, late in the afternoon, right around dusk, one F-15 jet circling the airport. We've been unable to even figure out exactly from officials here why that jet was out here, but it left an eerie tone to an eerie day in the city of Boston. This one F-15 fighter jet circling again and again Logan Airport.
So very far from normal today. Bill Delaney in Boston. Bill, thank you. To the other end of the country, LAX, Los Angeles International Airport, 3 planes were bound for there today. CNN's Frank Buckley parked outside there this evening. Frank, what's the scene there?
Well, Bill, the same eerie scene that our colleague Delaney is describing there in Boston, the same thing here in Los Angeles, a very eerie scene at a very quiet LAX. As you say, 3 flights were bound for Los Angeles, American 11 from Boston, American 77 from Washington Dulles Airport, and United Airlines Flight 175 also from Boston. None of those planes came here, obviously, to Los Angeles today, but a few people did come to Los Angeles Airport, perhaps to greet friends and family who are going to be getting off those planes, perhaps just to come to get information after hearing of the tragedies. They came, they were understandably shaken up. We will spare you the intrusion into their private grief. We will not show you that video, but we will show you the view inside of LAX as it was being evacuated. As the airport was being closed today, they also evacuated not just the American and United Airlines terminals, but also the Bradley International Terminal. In fact, all of the terminals were evacuated here at LAX. LAX was closed, no flights in or out, and that affected thousands of passengers. On an average day, there are some 160,000 passengers on 2,100 flights that go in and out of this airport. By this afternoon, however, LAX was completely empty, except for the security personnel and key personnel that were needed to keep the facility operating. those thousands of passengers stranded by all of this were still searching for hotel rooms late into the day. I was talking to a hotel manager nearby who was telling me the story of seeing pathetic scenes of passengers pushing those yellow carts with their luggage up Century Boulevard right near the airport, going from hotel to hotel trying to get